Ladies and gentlemen, what just happened will shock you, not because it is strange or unbelievable, but because it is something we have allowed for far too long. What just happened is not an accident. It's a reflection of who we are becoming when we stop paying attention. Let me take a moment and say this. You deserve the truth today, not sugar-coated, not diluted, just the truth. And the truth is, a decision was made that can shape the lives of millions. A vote was cast, a law was signed, and somewhere in the shadows, power shifted. But here's the real question: shifted for whom? Shifted for you, the people, or shifted for a select few who already hold more than enough? This is the moment where we stop scrolling past headlines and start asking ourselves, what does this mean for my family? What does this mean for my children? What does this mean for the future we've been dreaming about? Because, ladies and gentlemen, what just happened isn't just about policy, it's about people. Now, I know some of you are tired. You're tired of promises that sound like music but turn into noise. You're tired of being told, just wait, change is coming, when all you see is the same old story. And let me tell you, you have every right to feel that way. Because hope without action is just a beautiful word, but here's where the story changes, because it can change. This is not the end. This is the call to rise. This is the moment to use our voices, our votes, and our vision. This is the time when communities say, enough is enough. This is the day we stop saying, someone will do something, and start saying, I will do something. What just happened may shock you, but what happens next, that will define us. It's not in the hands of the powerful, it's in the hands of the people. It's in your hands. And when we stand together, when we speak together, when we fight for justice together, history does not stand still, it moves. So I'm asking you right here, right now, don't just be shocked, be moved, be loud, be unshakable, because what just happened is not the headline, what happens next is the story. Thank you. What just happened will shock you because it's not just a random occurrence or a simple twist in the daily news cycle. It is a defining moment that reveals the deep cracks in our system, cracks we've ignored for too long because we were busy, distracted, or simply trusting that those in power would act in our best interest. When you hear the words, what just happened, it's easy to think it's another headline, another scandal, another political maneuver that will fade away tomorrow. But this is different. This is a turning point, and whether we acknowledge it or not, it will shape the future we are walking into right now. The shock comes not because it is entirely unexpected, but because we never believed it could happen so openly, so boldly, in front of the very people who are supposed to hold the power, the people themselves. Imagine waking up and realizing that a decision was made that affects the food on your table, the cost of your medicine, the safety of your streets, or the education your children receive, and you had no say in it. That is the kind of shock we're talking about. It's the realization that while we were working hard, while we were paying taxes, while we were doing everything asked of us as citizens, someone else was quietly rewriting the rules. And those rules, they were not written for you, not for the single mother juggling 2 jobs, not for the small business owner trying to stay afloat, not for the student dreaming of a better future. They were written for a few, for those already sitting at the top, tightening their grip while smiling for the cameras and telling you that everything is fine. What makes this moment shocking is not just the action itself, but the audacity behind it. It is the confidence of those who believe we are too tired to fight, too divided to unite, too distracted to notice. They count on our silence, they count on our short attention spans, and they count on our willingness to accept this is just how it is. But deep down, you feel it, that pull in your chest that says, this isn't right, this isn't how it's supposed to be, and that feeling, that's the beginning of awareness, the moment when shock turns into clarity. Because the truth is, moments like this do not just happen out of nowhere. They are built on years of small choices, small compromises, small silences that add up until one day you wake up and realize the world around you has changed, and not for the better. That is why this moment matters so much. Because if we do not recognize the magnitude of what just happened, if we dismiss it as just another story, then the next shock will not just surprise us, it will define us forever. And that is why you must feel this moment deeply, because it is not just a headline, it is a wake-up call for every single one of us who believes in fairness, in justice, and in the power of people to stand together when everything is on the line. What just happened is not an accident. It is the product of choices, of strategies, of decisions made in boardrooms and backrooms, often without a single voice from the people it will affect most. We live in a world where nothing of political significance happens by coincidence. Every law passed, every deal signed, every handshake captured on camera has a purpose behind it, a purpose that often benefits a few while leaving the many behind. When you see a sudden policy change, a sudden alliance, or a sudden announcement that seems to come out of nowhere, understand this. It didn't come out of nowhere. It was planned, it was calculated, and it was designed to serve an agenda that might not include you at all. For too long, we have believed the illusion that these moments are surprises, that somehow they just appear like storms out of a clear blue sky. But storms do not form overnight. They build quietly, layer upon layer, until the sky can no longer hold them. That is exactly how these decisions work. They build in silence, in secrecy, behind closed doors where the voices of ordinary people cannot reach. And by the time the announcement comes, by the time you read the headline or watch the news, the deal is already done. Your opinion, your protest, they counted on you being too late, too shocked, too overwhelmed to respond in time. This is why it is dangerous to ignore the patterns that lead up to these moments. Because when something like this happens, when a decision reshapes the rules, it tells you that those patterns have been ignored for too long. The truth is, power never sleeps. While you are working, while you are resting, while you are hoping for a better tomorrow, there are people working tirelessly, but not for you. They are working to protect their wealth, to strengthen their influence, to lock down the kind of control that makes it harder and harder for ordinary citizens to reclaim what is rightfully theirs. And they do this with precision, with timing, with resources that most of us cannot even imagine. The reason this moment shocks you is because it exposes a truth we rarely want to admit. Our silence makes their work easier. Our complacency gives them room to maneuver, room to design a future that benefits only them. What just happened didn't shock them. They knew it was coming. They were counting on it. They were prepared for it. The only ones caught off guard were the people who should matter most. You, your family, your community. And this is where the weight of this moment hits you hardest. Because if it happened once, it can happen again, and the only way to break that cycle is to see clearly what is right in front of us. This was never an accident. This was the plan all along. The plan moves forward whether we notice or not. This moment is not just about a policy or a headline. It is about people, about families, about lives that will feel the ripple effects of decisions made in rooms they will never enter. When a law is signed or a regulation is changed, it does not remain an abstract idea. It finds its way into the price of groceries, the cost of health care, the wages you earn, and the schools your children attend. It is easy to believe that politics is something distant, something reserved for debates on television and speeches in grand halls, but the truth is that every decision at the top eventually lands at your doorstep. It shows up when you open your bills and realize you have less to spend on the things your family needs. It shows up when opportunities feel farther out of reach no matter how hard you work. When those in power make choices, they rarely feel the immediate weight of those choices. They will not wake up tomorrow wondering how to pay for their medicine or how to keep the lights on. But you might, someone you know might, and that is why this moment matters so much. Because what just happened may look like words on paper or sound like political language on the evening news, but behind those words are people who will feel the real impact, people who will have to decide between paying rent and buying food, people who will struggle to keep their businesses alive, people who will lose something they cannot afford to lose. This is where we must remind ourselves that politics is never neutral. It always serves someone. The question is, who does it serve today? Does it serve the parents who are trying to send their kids to school with hope for a brighter future? Does it serve the workers who are putting in long hours and still wondering how to make ends meet? Or does it serve the few who have the power to write the rules and change them whenever they see fit? If it does not serve you, if it does not serve the majority, then what we are witnessing is not governance, it is control. When we talk about people being at the center, it is not just a slogan. It is the very foundation of what democracy promises, that every policy, every law, every decision should reflect the needs and voices of the people it affects. But when those voices are ignored, when communities are treated like afterthoughts, that promise is broken. And when that promise is broken, trust erodes. People begin to feel invisible, unheard, and powerless. That is when frustration turns into anger, and anger turns into division. The decisions made today will write the story of tomorrow for millions of ordinary lives. And if those decisions are not rooted in fairness and humanity, then what just happened is more than a political move. It is a failure to honor the people who give power its meaning in the first place. People are tired, and that exhaustion is real. It is not the kind of tired that comes from a long day of work. It is the deep fatigue that comes from carrying hope for too long without seeing change. For years, citizens have been promised progress. They have listened to speeches filled with elegant words, bold visions, and grand promises. But promises without delivery become like echoes. They sound powerful at first, but the more they repeat without action, the more they fade into noise. That is where so many people find themselves today, standing in a storm of words, but feeling no shelter from their reality. They have heard the same assurances over and over, that jobs will be created, that education will improve, that health care will become affordable, that justice will prevail. Yet, in their everyday lives, they see little proof of these commitments turning into reality. This exhaustion breeds distrust, and distrust is dangerous because it does not just erode confidence in leaders, it erodes confidence in the system itself. When people stop believing that change is possible through the democratic process, they either disengage entirely or turn their frustration into chaos. And when that happens, the very foundation of a nation shakes. This is why ignoring this fatigue is not just a political mistake, it is a moral failure. Because behind every voter who stays home, behind every citizen who says it doesn't matter, there is a story of disappointment. There is someone who once believed and now feels that belief was wasted. What makes this even harder is that people are not asking for miracles, they are asking for fairness, for honesty, for leaders who mean what they say. They are asking for a system that listens as much as it speaks, that values action over applause. And when those simple expectations are not met, the gap between people and power grows wider and wider. That gap becomes a wall, and on the other side of that wall, decisions are made without the voices of the very people they affect. Every time a leader makes a promise and fails to keep it, trust does not just weaken, it fractures, and fractured trust is hard to repair. That is why today's moment feels heavier than most, because people have been patient for years. They have given second chances, third chances, endless chances. They have believed that maybe this time would be different, maybe this leader would stand firm, maybe this law would finally bring relief. But hope without evidence becomes a burden, and people can only carry that burden for so long before they put it down completely. This exhaustion is not passive. It is turning into anger, into demand, into a collective voice saying, "Enough is enough." And when that voice rises, it will either bring transformation or it will bring turmoil. The question now is whether leaders will hear it and act before it becomes too late. Hope is a beautiful thing, but when it stands alone without action to back it up, it becomes empty. People have been fed hope like a promise of rain in the desert year after year, watching clouds gather and disappear without a single drop to quench the thirst of their struggles. They have been told again and again to be patient, to trust the process, to wait for change that never seems to come. But here is the reality. Words without deeds do not build schools, they do not fill stomachs, they do not make communities safer. Hope without action is like planting seeds and never watering them. It looks like something is about to grow, but the soil remains dry and barren. For generations, leaders have stood before crowds and spoken about the future, painting pictures of progress so vivid that people could almost feel it. They believed in those images because they wanted to believe. They wanted to believe that the sacrifices they made every day, the long hours, the low wages, the endless struggle to keep families afloat, would one day mean something. But belief, no matter how strong, cannot build a bridge if no one picks up the stone. It cannot light the darkness if no one strikes the match. And yet many have been told that belief alone will carry them forward, that if they just stay hopeful, things will get better. This is why so many communities feel betrayed. They are not asking for the impossible. They are asking for leaders who mean what they say and prove it with what they do. They are asking for policies that do more than look good on paper, for actions that create real change in their everyday lives. Because hope that never turns into action becomes a weight, a heavy, bitter weight that people carry until they cannot carry it anymore. And when they finally put it down, it does not fall quietly. It falls like a roar, demanding something more than speeches, something more than smiles, something more than promises of tomorrow. Every time action is delayed, every time excuses replace solutions, that roar grows louder. People begin to see the truth that hope without action is not hope at all. It is a strategy, a way to keep people calm, to keep them waiting, to keep them silent. And when they see that, they stop waiting, they start moving, they start demanding, and that is when change begins, not because someone gave it to them, but because they refused to wait any longer. This moment, this breaking point, is proof that action matters more than any word spoken. It matters more than any headline or any applause at a podium. Because at the end of the day, progress is not measured by how well hope is sold. It is measured by how well lives are changed. People know this now, and they are ready to hold those in power accountable for every promise left unfulfilled. The power has never belonged to the few at the top. It has always lived in the hands of the people. Every law, every policy, every decision that shapes a nation ultimately draws its legitimacy from those who give consent to be governed. And yet, over time, many have forgotten this truth or been convinced that their voices do not matter, that their votes are just drops in an ocean too vast to make a difference. That illusion benefits those who would rather keep power concentrated, those who depend on silence and apathy to maintain control. But history shows something different. Every major movement, every shift in the course of a country began when ordinary people decided they were no longer willing to sit on the sidelines. Power in the hands of the people is not just a slogan, it is the foundation of a free society. It means that no matter how many resources, connections, or advantages the powerful may have, they cannot override the will of a united public. That is why the voices of citizens must never be underestimated. When people speak with one voice, when they act with one purpose, they become unstoppable. And that is exactly why so much effort is spent on dividing them, distracting them, convincing them that they are powerless. Because the truth is, the greatest fear of any system built on inequality is an informed, engaged, and united population that knows its worth. Right now, this is the moment to remember that power is not given, it is taken back through action. It is reclaimed every time someone votes, every time a community organizes, every time a citizen refuses to accept injustice as normal. The hands of the people can build or break. They can create systems that serve everyone or dismantle those that serve only a few. But that requires more than awareness. It requires courage. It means standing up when it feels easier to sit down, speaking out when silence seems safer. It means understanding that change is not a gift. It is a fight, and every person who joins that fight strengthens the force that will move mountains. Those who hold power now want you to believe that your voice is small, that your efforts will not matter, that the system is too big to challenge. But history has never belonged to the comfortable. It has belonged to the persistent, the relentless, the unshakable. Every right we enjoy today, from the ability to speak freely to the right to vote, was won because people before us understood this truth. They believed that even the smallest voice, when joined with others, could create an echo too loud to ignore. That is what we must remember now. The hands of the people are not weak. They are the strongest force in any democracy, and when they rise together, they can transform not just laws or policies, but the very future of a nation.